Welcome all everyone to the 36th annual Rhode Island Labor History Awards banquet. I'm Mark Shanley. I'm a proud working member of Local Union 99 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. All right. I want to encourage anybody who's still standing. We've sold plenty of chairs for every tickets we have. If there's a reserved table, make yourself some new friends, find a seat, buy somebody a drink. That always works for me, you know. But I want to thank all of our friends, members, and member unions for their support and attendance tonight. We appreciate all of you. You help keep the society going. Furthermore, we also want to thank our many friends, brothers, and sisters who could not be here tonight because they're at the Democratic National Convention for year 2024. All right. Listen, channeling my inner late night host, we have a phenomenal show for you tonight. You're not going to believe it. As always, the intrepid and inimitable ILSR is recording this event for posterity, and dare I say for history. Thank you to Paul Hubbard and David Molina Hernandez for working on the camera and doing all the sound and AV work back there. We appreciate you. Very nice. Everyone's found their seats. I would be remiss now if I did not remind all of our esteemed guests that this society, in its 36th year, is the last remaining society of its kind in New England. At one point, there was a labor history society for every state in the region, and we are the only ones who are still holding it strong, keeping it moving. All of you, you can please... As always, please refer to your programs for contact information for the society. If you want to become a member, it's the best deal in town. It's a great value. We do a lot of great work. If you're an existing member, also refer to that program for contact information because we are always trying to keep up to date with accurate emails and phone numbers to let you know about all the fun stuff that we do. Now, tonight we have 3 honorees receiving Lifetime Achievement Awards, 1 Trailblazer Award reserved for those in the labor movement who are still actually moving. But first, we're going to hear from the Rhode Island Labor History Society's president and spiritual leader, Jim Parisi. Jim.
Hey, good evening, everyone. And if I'm the spiritual leader, I should probably start with a prayer, but I will dispense with that for the moment. As Mark said, we are the last standing Labor History Society in New England. We're very proud of that fact. It's all due to having an excellent executive board, people who don't just show up for meetings and the free homemade wine that I bring from my basement, but actually show up and do some work. Let me tell you about the Labor History Society in just a couple of minutes. Last year, on August 23rd, we honored 3 labor leaders and 2 organizations at our annual banquet. I heard it was a great party. I missed it because of COVID, but I saw it on tape, and it was a great time. We honored Tony Capezza, who's here today from IBPO. We honored Ann Conway, the executive director of the Museum of Work and Culture, and Andrew Cortez from Building Futures. We also offered Trailblazing Awards for the striking DHL Teamsters and to UFCW for organizing in the new economy. Congrats to all those folks. So in addition to our annual banquet, probably the second most important thing we do is that we host an annual Labor Day address. We work real hard to keep labor and Labor Day here in Rhode Island. Last year, we had a great crowd to hear the speaker who was Joe Walsh, who was a business manager of 99 IBEW, did a terrific job, stemwinder speech. And we also had music that morning from the late Mary Lee Partington. Every year, the Labor History Society donates $500 to the Museum of Work and Culture so that they can be open for free on Labor Day, and we are doing that again this year. We provided financial support and co-hosted a screening of one of the installments of the series Slaterville. Slaterville is a series on PBS about the first American mill village. The screening was at the Museum of Work and Culture on Labor Day, and we hosted a panel discussion with the director, Christian de Resendez, along with some other panelists on Labor Day last year. We actually sponsored a panel discussion in October of last year with Jerry Carbone talking about the Baloo textile empire in Woonsocket, and Jerome Vanderhulk, who was talking about the textile mills in North Kingstown. We sponsored a second panel discussion in January of this year, organized by our esteemed Scott Malloy. The panel was about organizing in the 80s and early 90s. The panelists included Bobby Marchand, Linda McDonald of UNEP, Stan Israel from SEIU 1199, and Jim Riley. The Labor History Society continues giving $100 checks to students who do labor-related topics on Rhode Island History Day. My kids benefited from that back in the day. It's a school competition where students do projects on history, and every time a student does a project on labor history, we like providing a little financial incentive to keep the labor movement in their mind. And we offered a number of cash awards this year. And this year, for the first time, we co-sponsored the First Strike Festival at Slater Mill. Now, we have a lot of history in Rhode Island, and probably the most remarkable to me is that in 1824, 200 years ago this year, the first industrial strike in the United States of America was led by young women who were textile weavers in a number of mills in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. It's one of the greatest untold stories about our history here in Rhode Island, and kudos to the National Park Service that's taken over operation of Slater Mill for keeping that issue on the forefront. So they organized what they call a First Strike Festival, and we participated and co-sponsored some events there this year in May, and we'll do it again in the future for sure. We also printed 1,000 copies of the publication, the graphic book, What You Probably Don't Know About Labor in Rhode Island. Copies are available on the door, by the doors downstairs, by our esteemed artist and Labor History Board member, Mike D'Amico, who is somewhere in the audience. So that's a lot for a bunch of volunteers, who are only fed pizza and homemade wine a couple of Fridays during the year. This coming year, we're gonna again have our annual Labor Day address coming up on Monday, September 2nd, 10 o'clock, Mashassack Cemetery, because there's nothing like spending Labor Day in a cemetery here in Rhode Island. And the speaker's gonna be Allison Horrocks, who's the park ranger over at Slater Mill. We also gave another donation to the Museum of Work and Culture. They're open free on Labor Day. Another project we're working on, and I'm particularly mindful of Michael Downey, the late Mike Downey. We're working with Council 94 to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the death of Wilma Schessler. Wilma Schessler was a state worker. She was on a picket line. A scab ran her car into the picket line, killing Wilma, seriously injuring one other striker and injuring a third. That happened 50 years ago, and the anniversary is coming up this coming November. So we have a tentative date of November 7th where we're working with Council 94 to commemorate Wilma and the other strikers, an important event in Rhode Island labor history, and it'll be on the State Complex compound in Cranston. So keep posted for that. We're going to do a third panel discussion. We're going to, again, co-host the First Strike Festival. And then finally, and there's a tiny bit of mea culpa in this, I've announced from this podium the past couple of years that we're working on compiling a book of all the Labor History Society honorees over the last 37 years. We've hit a few roadblocks. It's been tough kind of staffing that project, finding the right person to do the research and see the research through. but I figure if I say it out loud enough, it will actually happen at some point in time. So I'm taking a risk and I'm opening my mouth, and we'll see to that project. As Mark mentioned, we have affordable dues, $25 a year, $40 for 2 years. We do a lot on a meager budget. We'd welcome all your participation if you're not members. And then finally, as you may have noted in the banquet invitation, this is my last year as president of the Labor History Society. I've decided not to run for re-election when our term expires in October. It's been a terrific 10-year run leading this great organization. I've always had a love for labor history ever since I took that class with Professor Nick Salvatore up at Cornell University. He just communicated the vibrancy of the labor movement to someone who really knew nothing about the labor movement as a 20-year-old. And I've loved labor history ever since. I've really valued preserving and protecting our history here in Rhode Island. And it's been a great run. I appreciate the support of the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, who allow me to do some labor history project while I'm on the clock, and have provided some support in the forms of Bonnie and Maria in my office. And I appreciate the RFTHP supporting me so I can support the society. We've got a great group of volunteers, and we're going to figure out what our future leadership looks like. But I just wanted to thank you all for your collective support for the Labor History Society during my presidency for the last 10 years. Thank you very much. Thank you all for the applause for my labor of love. So now you get 2 speeches from me for the price of 1. The executive board of the Rhode Island Labor History Society wanted to start the program, after my lengthy introduction, with a brief thank you for someone who's really important for labor history here in Rhode Island, and that person is the man behind the camera, Paul Hubbard. Paul, come up here. Thank you, brother.
Hey, how about it?
So let me tell you why the board wanted to honor Paul. So many of you in this room remember Chuck Schwartz, former staff person with the Institute, who attended every single labor function that ever happened in Rhode Island for decades with a camcorder on his shoulder, back when we taped things with a camcorder that was about that big. So we had a great record of what was going on in Rhode Island with the labor movement back in the day. Unfortunately, Chuck passed away in 2006, endangering our ability to preserve our history here in Rhode Island. And Paul stepped up to fill the void. Paul brought his own skills and abilities to work at the Institute for Labor Studies and Research, working on their Labor Vision program. He's attended every single Labor History Society event in the last 15 years or so. He tapes them all. He posts them on cable TV and YouTube. The act of preserving our history is so vitally important that our board wanted to recognize Paul for that work. Thank you, Paul. So I'm not done yet. Just a couple of words about Paul. Paul's a family man. Paul has a great interest in politics, starting from when he was at Hope High School, organizing a student strike in response to the Ohio National Guard killing of students in 1970. His activism goes back that far. He helped organize the largest protest march in U.S. history, the 71 protest march in Washington against the war in Vietnam. He then moved to Atlanta, was an auto worker down in Atlanta, Georgia for a Ford assembly plant, was very active in the desegregation movement of schools that happened in the early 70s down there. Returned to Rhode Island, kind of got involved in his brother's band, and he got interested in filming and photographing the Room Full of Blues over the years, and that's where he initiated his interest in videography. He continued that with Harold Zinn, the professor and author that some of you may know, obviously an interest in progressive and left-wing politics. And something I just learned recently, and I'll talk about this more later this evening, is that while filming the rally for the fired Central Falls teachers in 2010, Paul met Bob Delaney and began his tenure as Labor's chronicler, Labor's videographer. Yeah. What a great happenstance from a truly awful and tragic, firing that was all about. So he's done Labor Vision for years, and again, as a Labor History Society, preserving sources is so important. And I want to thank Paul not only preserving what's going on in the Rhode Island labor movement last decade and this decade, but think about people doing research 50 years from now. You know, there's more about Rhode Island history than labor history than any of our neighboring states' labor history because of Paul Hubbard. Paul, thank you very much.
It's been a while. It's good to see everybody. I've unfortunately missed the past couple of labor history banquets due to some health problems, but I'm on the mend perfectly. So I'm just going to start off my comments with a quote from one of our great musicians and poets, Jerry Garcia. No, seriously, what a long, strange trip it's been. And I think that we all can say something about that in all of our lives. So I had prepared some comments, but Jim seemed to cover most of what I was going to say, which is fine. I just wanted to thank the Labor History Society, the Institute for Labor Studies and Research, which has been a great organization to work for. Working with Bob Delaney and all the staff over at the Institute has just been terrific. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Paul, token of appreciation from the Labor History Society. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Paul, once again. As Jim had mentioned, the Rhode Island Labor History Society is run by an all-volunteer board who meet on Fridays to drink Jim's homemade wine and to eat pizza. Easy, folks. Let's bring it back together now. All right. I want to take a moment to honor all of those people who give up their Fridays for that. James Parisi, President. Kim Weinman, Vice President. Nadine Gregg, Treasurer. Michael D'Amico, Secretary. Adam Aquilante. Catherine Collette. Pat Crowley. Haley De La Rosa. Daniel DeRocco. Vicki Gregg. Autumn Guillaume. Matt Gunnup. Karen McAnich. Kevin McElroy, Ryan McIntyre, Scott Malloy, Alvin Reyes, Miriam Newman, Jim Riley, Alexis Santoro, Amanda Scott, Linda Teoli, Mary Murphy Walsh, and that guy Mark Shanley. You got to watch out for him. But please, let's have a round of applause for all of those volunteers who make this possible. But on a more somber note, if you'll bear with me for a minute, a number of notable individuals have passed since last year's banquet. They are William Kennedy, steelworker, who was honored in 1998, Michael Downey of AFSCME, who was honored in 2013, William Tamelio of the AFT, honored in 2018, and Mary Lee Partington, a labor musician who always was with our society, all recently passed. As a Labor History Society, we would like to request a moment of silence to honor these fallen leaders. All right, thank you very much. Getting on to our ceremony proper, I'm going to be calling Jim Riley up to the board now for our first award. Jim has been on the Rhode Island Labor History Society Executive Board for decades. He's retired from the USFCW, but he's still active in the movement. He's worked for the ILSR, and I'm going to turn it over to him now to introduce our first honoree.
Thank you to my brothers and sisters at Local 328 for your very special way of showing your love for me. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am honored to present the first award tonight to one of the hardest working people in the labor industry here in Rhode Island, the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Institute for Labor Studies and Research, Bob Delaney. Bob Delaney is from Sydney, Nova Scotia, Canada. For my guys, that's in north of us. Sydney. I put my glasses on and see what the hell I'm doing. Sydney is a union steel town, and unions have always been a part of Bob's life. Bob's father was on the executive board of Local 1064, United Steelworkers of America, and his uncle, Jim McDonald, was on the staff and executive of the Canadian Labor Congress. Bob's first union was as a member of the Meat Cutters Union. We have that in common, my brother. When he was just 18 years old and working at the Co-op grocery store, his first experience with strikes was a wildcat walkout with that union. We start on the right way over there. Bob graduated from St. Xavier University and became a teacher, first in Alberta, Canada, and then in Nova Scotia, where he taught for 20 years and was a proud member of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union. Bob was a building rep, then vice president of professional development, and then president of his local teachers union. He always says that my experience as a teachers union leader changed the course of my career. It also changed the course of his personal life when he married the fabulous Colleen Callahan from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Presidents, and they're still on their honeymoon to this day. Bob became Director of Workforce Development and Corporate Education and a NERI member at CCRI. And boy, did we get lucky when in 2007, Bob became the Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. In his 18 years at the Institute, Bob has grown the programs and services of the Institute, particularly its teaching assistant training program, and has just secured a $1.1 federal grant to create a statewide teachers apprenticeship program with the teachers unions in Rhode Island and the Rhode Island AFL-CIO. Most recently, the ILSR has designed a training program with RIPTA to help provide more well-trained bus drivers.
Hey! Me, Scott.
Today, the ILSR provides education and training programs for over 5,000 Rhode Island workers, both in person and virtually every year. Brothers and sisters, will you kindly join me in giving a warm welcome to one of the hardest workers in the labor movement in Rhode Island, Bob. Come on up, Bob. Come on up, Bobby.
For any of you who have been at the Institute for Labor Studies and Research dinner, two things. Number one, you probably know that if you let me go, I can talk forever. Second thing, I know George is here. Where is he? Where's George Nee? There he is. George, you don't have to panic tonight. I actually had notes, but they all went to hell with Jimmy. So I just want to take the opportunity at this point to thank the Rhode Island Labor History Society for honoring me with this prestigious award. As Jimmy said, I've been around for a long time. Labor has been everything in my life. When I was a kid, and my father would get laid off every November and get hired again in February, that framed how we lived. But we all knew that organized labor would get him back to work and get a paycheck back on the table. And that influenced how I felt about the importance of organized labor and changing the lives of working people. I'm more than honored to attend all of these dinners, and in particular tonight, for celebrating with Jim Parisi and Karen Hazard, with the people tonight, but as well as with the many distinguished labor leaders over the years, and we know them. Jim mentioned them. We all know that there's not a union in here that has not been influenced by somebody who has received an award at this particular evening, and for the Labor History Society. I want to thank Jim Parisi and everybody at the Labor History Society for the work and the dedication that they do to make sure that history is alive and well in Rhode Island. Join me in congratulating them. I think it's pretty clear that I came from a strong union family. And it was pretty clear to me that when I went on my first wildcat strike when I was 18 years old and it was the meat cutters union at that time. UFCW had not merged in Canada. So I was a proud meat cutter union, even though I only stocked shelves. But when they gave the call at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that we walk, then we all walked. And it wasn't because I was afraid of the workers that I was with. I was afraid of going home if I didn't. It was that simple, because if they walk, you walk. Because we know an injury or injustice to one is an injustice and an injury to us all. And that guides what we do. It's interesting that when I came to Rhode Island a number of years ago, I said I would not be a member, I would not be an administrator, I would not do anything unless I was a member of organized labor. And Jimmy mentioned the fact that Throughout my years, whether it was a member of the Meat Cutters Union or an executive and a leader in the Nova Scotia Teachers Union at both the local and the provincial level, when I came to Rhode Island, it was absolutely critical that I became a member of organized labor not because I needed the protection, but I needed the brotherhood and the sisterhood of the people in organized labor to know that if something went wrong, we were all in this together. And we all know that it doesn't take a whole lot for an administrator in a shop or an organization to make a call that has a negative influence on a worker in the job. And being a member of a union is a brotherhood and a sistership that we share together, but we protect each other. And that is absolutely correct, absolutely necessary. The work that Paul Hubbard has done over the years, but in particular from the time I met him when the Central Falls teachers were going on strike, and he was taping it, and we needed somebody, and there were a couple of decals, Paul, that you had on the camera about socialism and a few other things, and I thought, this guy's the guy for us. And I'll tell a little story that I shouldn't tell, Colleen, but I'm going to say it now. Because it's too late. They can't do anything to me. They can't. Yeah. And I didn't have enough to drink to hold me back from saying it, so. When they had all those teachers in the room that were going to get fired, look at the reaction now. When they had all those teachers in the room, we were all really angry. They were going to fire 60 teachers in Central Falls. That's not okay. And everybody sitting in the room, and the superintendent was going to start calling the names of those teachers. And I thought, this can't happen. So I hollered out, at least have the dignity to stand when you call their names. And the place went silent, and she stood up. Because that's what has to happen. Labor has to hold administration accountable for the decisions that they make that impact the lives of working people. I'm all jacked up after watching the Democratic Convention now. But I think
You're not running.
No. So there's a couple of things I want to mention. I think the first thing is that I have been influenced by many labor people in my life. My father, my Uncle Jim, who was blackballed from the unions in Nova Scotia because he tried to organize the auto mechanics, and they kicked him out of Nova Scotia, so he just went somewhere else to work until the Canadian Labour Congress said, you need to come and work for us. And he got involved in organized labor, but he also got involved in the cooperative movement. The cooperative movement, and if you know, we have some cooperative movements on cleaning and a number of other things. The cooperative movement in Canada was alive, strong, and well because it did cooperative housing. We had cooperative grocery stores. We had cooperative service stations. And that's critical to the core values of organized labor and a sense of equalism in the country. When I came to Rhode Island, thank God I knew something about organized labor because my immediate connection was when Marcia Reback and Frank Montanaro asked me if I would consider taking the job at the Institute. Now, I'm not going to tell you I jumped at it right away. I said no first, and eventually Frank called back, and you don't say no to Frank Montanaro or Marcia Reback. Just doesn't happen. And I told my wife about it. We went through the discussion, and I decided to take the job. But I would really like now to thank them posthumously. Those two individuals have made a difference in my life and your life, and I want to thank them. I have been very fortunate to have mentors in Rhode Island in my life. Fortunate to have people like George Nee, Eddie McElroy, Dennis Neary, Scott Malloy, and oh so many of you here and not here in organized labor, because you were the light that allowed me to see what needed to be done at the Institute. You were the light who came and said, this is the program that we need to raise and grow. When Eddie McElroy started the Institute for Labor Studies and Research, one of the things that happened at the executive board of the AFL-CIO, many of them said to Eddie, are you nuts? Why would I train somebody else to become a union leader to take my job? And the issue becomes what if we don't train them and the people that come in there know nothing about organized labor? That made the difference. To this day, we train 150 stewards each and every year to fill these seats, to take leadership positions, to guarantee that your children, your grandchildren, my grandchildren are going to have a life that is guaranteed with a degree of equity. They don't have to worry about going to tell a manager that something is not right because they were told never let anybody go alone. Go with somebody else, tell the manager what the problem is, and they won't fire you. They won't have what it takes. But organized labor and leadership training and steward training at the Institute is the core value of what we do. And I need to give Chuck the credit for that because we've been doing that for 42 years. We have trained more than 10,000 stewards in 42 years. There is nothing that would have happened at the Institute without these people at this table behind you. I cannot tell you. I'm the smoke and mirrors guys. Look, it's easy for me. When we first came on, I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And people looked at me like we were growing horns. And then over the years, all these people came who shared the same value, and they created what the Institute is now. From a small 1,500 square foot space to 15,000 square feet, training more than 5,000 to 8,000 people virtually and face-to-face each year. And that's because of the support that comes from the people in this room. For the last 25 years, I've had the opportunity to be married to a remarkable labor leader. Dr. Colleen Callahan recently retired from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals. She was the director of professional issues. And anybody who is a teacher in this room, if you say Colleen's name, they know who she is. They know the difference that she made. She's saying, enough, Bob, get on with it, will ya? But I really want to say that leadership is just so important. Organized labor has affected my life, but it has also affected the life of my family. Colleen and I are very lucky to have a wonderful blended family. We have 5 kids, 7 grandchildren. They're not able to be here tonight because there's 2 of them that live in British Columbia and another one that lives in northern Massachusetts that, if I think not mistaken, they're flying home right now from Jamaica. Having said that, I want to take a moment to thank our family, my family. This is the tough part, guys. So going around the table, I'll go from the oldest to the youngest, and I want to thank each and every one of them. The oldest in our family is Scott Bilecki. He's an attorney at Cameron Middleman. He makes a difference. He works with organized labor. He has helped a lot of teachers, a lot of organizations, and a lot of contracts. Thank you, Scott. Scott's wife, Sarah. I am so lucky. I have the best daughters-in-law in the world. Sarah Bilecki. Our 2 oldest, talented, gorgeous, wonderful grandchildren, Lucy Bilecki and Ted Bilecki. Then we skip through all the rest and come to the youngest guy. Youngest guy is a police officer in Winthrop, Maine. He's a union building rep, and he just negotiated a new contract that gave a catch-up contract for more than 26% of the salary for the people that he has negotiated the contract for. Andrew Delaney. I am so lucky to have Tricia, his wife, our daughter-in-law. They live in Maine. And equally important are our 2 granddaughters with I think they're Irish names, Rory and Kenzie Delaney. And the last thing I want to do is I want to thank this family of organized labor. You guys have been a family to me and a family to everybody I know. Whether we were walking a picket line for UFCW when they were on strike, or a Teamster strike, or teachers getting fired, any number of things, we have been there. Paul covered it, we were there, you were there. And the fight's not going away tomorrow. It's going to stay strong because you're strong. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for this award, and thank you for being part of our family.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bob Delaney, once more. Now, for our next honoree, I'm going to call another Rhode Island Labor History Executive Board member up here who has spent 2 decades teaching English in the field and has worked for NERI for the last 5 years. Amanda Scott, please come to the stage.
My dress has pockets. Pockets for the revolution, ladies. Pocket for the revolution. Good evening, sisters and brothers. Welcome, and thank you for being here tonight. My name is Amanda Scott, and I am an executive director for NEA Rhode Island. I stand here today as a union member, as the president of my own local staff union, and as a force for the working people in our great state. Please know, however, that I do not stand on my own feet alone, but rather on the shoulders of the women in this movement who have come before me and beside all of the women in this room tonight. And thank you all, ladies, for being here. Historically speaking, labor unions have been led by men. But tonight, we have the privilege of honoring an amazing woman leader who ignored the testosterone in the room and kept demanding to be heard for her members, for her union, and for all women who knew they could lead if just given the opportunity. I had the pleasure of speaking with Karen Hazard recently one-on-one. Karen is not one to be the loudest voice in the room or to seek the spotlight. If you know her, she kind of sits in the back, and there she is, really quiet. She's not the loudest, she's not the spotlight, but she leads with quiet grace and with the core principle that our job in this world is to serve and help others. When I asked Karen about why labor is important to her, she said, because labor brings out our humanity. And that a powerful statement that is. Labor brings out our humanity. She fights for women's rights, for the rights of families, for the mental health supports that our members need, and for the belief that when we lay our heads down at night, we have done good in this world, and that's what the labor movement is all about. Karen believes in the power of women and in the power of women of color, that by lifting up others who may not be the usual voice in the room, we all can become stronger in our fight for bread and roses. Karen Hazard is the first woman president of the Rhode Island Laborers District Council. She also served as a business manager, president and executive board member for Laborers Local 1134 at Zambarano Hospital, as well as a steward for Council 94 at URI. She is the business manager for Liuna Local 808, and most recently she received the Rhode Island Dante Mello Labor United Award in 2023. Please help me bring to the stand a woman who fights for all of you and for all workers in this state, Karen Hazard.
Everybody have a seat. So, first of all, when I received the call about accepting this award from Jim, and coming from him, it was nothing more than an honor. I mean, you just, and I spoke to Jim tonight, and I'm going to tell you, from me to you, I appreciate everything that you've done. Listen, it's going to be strange, right? Not seeing you, not hearing from you. I don't know what your plans are, but labor history, when I think of labor history, I think of people like you, Scott Malloy, from URI. History is here, right? One of the worst things about being on this docket is following Mr. Delaney, right? Because let me tell you something. You and I have developed a relationship. I don't have a speech, but I have a couple of things I'd like to say. The three things that my mother told me as a child that she wished for me was, one, get a 40-hour-a-week job. Two, I need you to graduate from high school. And three, I want you to be baptized. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I'm still working on the third, I swear to you. Tonight is a very special night. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be in a room full of people who care about others. And for me, that's my religion. As you may have seen, my daughter's here tonight. She's here because my mom also taught me that in every moment there's a lesson to be learned. With 3 daughters and 5 boys, I need to do that on a daily basis, not just with, what I do at home, but what I do at work and why I do what I do. I named my daughters Peyton, Grayson, and Alex. Well, she's Alexandra, but she's Alex. Because when they went to go apply for a job, I wanted them to have a chance. And it may be something minute, but it was something that affected me when I became a carpenter at the University of Rhode Island. Because my name was Karen, and I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. Because when I went for those interviews, when I sat in front of those men that were making those decisions, I knew before I left there that I wasn't going to be the candidate. So what did I do? To New England Tech and got my degree. Because then they wouldn't have an excuse to say no. So I had to do the work myself. And that was okay. But I wanted to give my daughters the chance, and I want them to see, and my daughter, who's here today, and she's 10, she's my youngest, I want her to see the people in this room. I want her to know that these folks that are here are incredible people. They automatically become your family. Yeah. Okay? In some way, I've either talked to these people, I've seen them, we've been at a picket line, we've been at a rally, we've been at an award it's been no matter what it is. I'm telling you, don't cry, it's all right. it's about being a part of something. I know that she's sensitive because all my children are adopted. So they're looking and longing, right, for that family. And I want them to know that labor can be your family in so many ways. And I want to educate you about that, but I don't do it alone. There's no way I do this alone. You have the Institute of Labor Studies. You've got the Rhode Island Labor History Society that teaches you about this. I want you to know about this. When I left Council 94 to go to work at the laborers up at Zambarano, the only reason I left is because there was an opportunity for advancement to be a carpenter supervisor. I will tell you, tonight is kind of tough for me. And the reason being is because I don't have one of my best friends here. The man that helped me kind of get to where I am today. And if it wasn't for him protecting my mother, because management was going after her about something that was totally not her fault, I wouldn't have joined the union, or I might not have become a steward and an executive board member, or however that may be. And we all know that was my good friend Michael Downey. I miss him. Michael and I both came from South County. We knew each other's family. He worked in the maintenance department like I did, you know, and he was my brother. I could call him even, I talked to him 2 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. You know, we had that camaraderie. We could just pick the phone up and I'd say, hey, Michael, what's going on? Or he'd call me, and there's nothing to replace that, right? Listen, where I'm at today is because of what I went through in the past. I'm a proud laborer. Yeah. I've got my brothers here. I've got my sisters here. I have to do a shout out for my administrative staff, because I'm going to tell you something. They are the cog that makes it run. And I'm sure that is also, as Bob said, that's what it is, right? We're here, but we're here because they do the work. You have to get credit where credit is due. I do want to acknowledge that I'm very happy to be here this year, and I love the peppering of the women that are in this room. You see, because it's gotten better, but there's more to be done. Because even today, after 36 years, which is wonderful, great coincidence, I'm still looking for that person that looks like me. And if you look in this room, I've got some pepper in, but there's still more to be done. Okay? The inclusion still needs to continue. And yes, I'm coming off that DNC stuff. Yes, I am. My children are probably tired of hearing it because it's in the car, it's everywhere, right? Because if I miss something, I'm on YouTube, I'm listening to it, because for me, what I want my daughter to get is that the people in this room have power. Yeah. Power to make the change, power to keep it going, and power to be successful in so many ways. It's not about money. You understand? I'm one of the luckiest, richest individuals in this world. Because in this room, I feel love. You understand me? Yeah. That's what it's about. And I just want to acknowledge that I can't do it without my executive board, my district council, my administrative staff, my brothers and sisters that are here from all over, not just the laborers who I love and cherish. Listen, Alexis, you and I have created a relationship. It's about respect. We're not always going to agree, and that's human nature, right? But the one thing we do have in common I believe, anybody in this room, is that we're here to help folks. We're here to put bread on the table. We're here to make it better for folks, living wages. I mean, I could go on, and I'm not going to do that because Tom said he was going to tackle me if I took too long. 2 minutes, okay. So listen, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all of you. I don't care if it was a phone call. I don't care if it was, hi Karen, how you doing? How's your family? I'm grateful for all of that. You understand? Some of you may not know me, some of you may know me by name, or maybe did have seen me by face. Please know that if I've had an interaction with you, positive or negative, I want to thank you all. I truly, truly do. And I want to thank you for this award. I appreciate it, the executive board. Thank you so much. I'm so honored just to be considered, and I'm bursting with pride, I have to say. And let me just say that it is an honor to be in this room amongst all of you, amongst those that were here before us, and hopefully those that will be the future, because that's what I'm working on. Thank you all very much.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Karen, for those words that speak so much to who we are and what we stand for in this movement. Thank you very much, and thank you, Amanda, as well, for that introduction. Our next award, however, this presenter does not need any introduction, but it's fallen to me to do that. But he is retired. I can't even say the words Amalgamated Transport Union. He's from URI. He remains an active and integral part of Rhode Island Labor History Society. He's regularly published in the Providence Journal, whether they like it or not. Scott Malloy, please come up and introduce our next honoree.
What kind of an assignment do I have? Jimmy Parisi gives his acceptance speech before I introduce him. Bob Delaney gives my introductory speech for Jimmy before I can do it. And Karen steals the show. What the hell's left for me to do? Now I know you're all sick and tired of hearing about the Rhode Island Labor History Society being the last such group of its kind here in New England. It's been said 2 or 3 times tonight. And back in 1987, when we incorporated, all 6 states in the New England region had a version of a labor history society, and today we stand alone. The Labor History Society in Rhode Island stands alone, and that's a testament to all of you and to the current labor movement that continues to feed us good stuff to keep the history going. Which indirectly brings me to our next honoree. Jimmy Parisi is stepping down after 10 years at the helm of the society. His decade of service stretches from 2014 to 2024. And in many ways, I consider that time period in American society the most perilous time for groups such as ours. If you go back to the 1980s, when we started, when we began, Labor history was flourishing, exploding. Courses, lectures, publications, Hollywood movies, Norma Ray, 9 to 5, the list seemed endless. Today, not so much. Though the labor movement itself is doing well. Did you ever think you'd see the day when the two top candidates for a political party had both walked the picket line? In your wildest dreams. And yet, despite these hard times, we've done well. In many instances, thanks to Jimmy, as I'll point out in a minute or two. If we took all the pamphlets and the books that the Society has published, if we took all of those things that have been written by our members for other groups and associations and universities, the pile would be this high. And you heard earlier a shout out for Mike D'Amico. A journeyman electrician. A guy who built this podium. He's scabbing on the carpenters. They don't join, so we don't care. And then writes a book about Rhode Island labor history for kids. So if you call your union electrician in the next few weeks and he or she can't get there for a while, it's because they're catching up on their labor reading. Don't bother them. But thanks to Jimmy Parisi's unstinting guidance and dedication in this tough era, we're prospering like never before. We've never stopped emphasizing blue collar over blue blood. Blue collar over blue blood. Jimmy Parisi does everything with grace, friendliness, and gentle persuasion. And the laborers are all saying, gentle persuasion? What the hell is that? Those words don't go together. Hey, persuade, maybe you're gentle with your kids, but gentle persuasion, nah. But we're still here because of Jimmy, because of the stellar executive board. Otherwise, I might be here giving you the eulogy for the Labor History Society. There's many elected union officials in the audience here tonight. We've all got our to-do lists. You know, things that are important, some things that aren't so important. We do what we have to when it has to be done. But Jimmy's task, when you think about it, not only working full-time for the teachers union, but putting together, for example, this banquet, an endless task, forging the History Day competition among the schools in Rhode Island for the labor topics, putting together panels of union members to discuss things about yesteryear and what we can learn from it, and never forgetting Labor Day, or as he pointed out earlier in his first acceptance speech, organizing a rally and demonstration, and you all better get your asses there in November for Wilma Shesler, the only woman in Rhode Island history to ever die in a labor action. Murdered! Sentenced to 6 years in jail, she served 7 days. 50 years ago. The list goes on for the things that Jimmy and advocates, champions, who fight for us all the time, and you know something? We hardly ever know it. That's how smooth they are. Jimmy, when he's not doing all of that, also volunteers at his annual church feast, where he ladles out clam chowder. Vicky, where are you? Get a picture of that. And at the executive board meetings at Friday nights at 5 o'clock, well, maybe I don't want to join after all. Friday nights at 5, Jimmy brings in homemade wine from a secret recipe out of the depths of Italy from his grandfather. You beat that. And in those few moments when he can relax, the family hightails it to Myrtle Beach. I'm almost done. I just wanted to tell you, I haven't missed one damn banquet in 36 years. I was here for number 1, I'm here for 36. God damn it, I'm getting to 50. Now, a lot of you think that I never missed any of them because of you. I couldn't care about that. It was the bacon and the scallops. The bacon and the scallops. But you know, I've seen a lot of Union patriots cross this stage. I've seen giants. I've seen saints. I've seen even a few sinners come up here. And some people go, I hope he doesn't mean me. We look back and think of those people, so many of them not with us any longer, how iconic they were, how iconic their unions were. What a spiritual movement we belong to. As Karen said, we are family. And Jimmy's our godfather. That wasn't an Italian slur. But those people have given everything over the years. And just one fact. Boy, when I used to teach at URI, I whacked this home. In 1935 alone, the middle of the Great Depression, 100 trade unionists shot dead on picket lines, 100! Not one person ever prosecuted for their murders. Not one! 100 people fell for us, and we don't know one of their goddamn names. Well, before I ask Jimmy to come up, one last unprecedented action, I believe. I'd like to entertain a motion from the floor, from the voice of the assembled membership here tonight, to declare Jimmy Parisi the President Emeritus of the Rhode Island Labor History Society. Is there a motion? Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. Severally seconded, severally hundred seconded. Brothers and sisters, the newly minted President Emeritus of the Rhode Island Labor History Society, Jimmy Parisi.
Thank you all very much. Thank God I gave my first acceptance speech already. Let me start where some others end their speeches by thanking my family. I thank them for their love and support for my entire 41-year career as a union rep and my time in participating in organizations like the Rhode Island Labor History Society. Labor relations and government relations work requires lots of time, attention, and an irregular work schedule. And I certainly appreciate my wife's willingness to put up with that. My bride of 38 years, Rosemary Parisi, sitting over there. She could have done better than me, but I couldn't have done better than marrying her. Thank you for putting up with being married to a union rep for all those years. Although I do a reminder, she knew what she was getting into, because I was a field rep for 3 years before we got hitched. Unlike a lot of our honorees, I didn't grow up in a union household, but my 3 children did. Tony, Tina, and Danielle grew up knowing that the labor movement put food on our table and a roof over our heads, and they knew to appreciate it. And I thank you all for being here and for your love and support over the years. So in relation to care and hazards, I'm from a small family. I'm number 5 out of 6. So, but I thank my 2 siblings who live in Rhode Island, Clelia and Julia, for being here. Family's so important to the work we do. Family's so important to our lives, and it just makes our lives so much richer having things to share with. I want to thank 2 people that are unknown to everyone in this room except Rosemary to start. At age 22, I got my first union job with SEIU Local 500 in Montgomery County, Maryland. It was a union that represented about 7,000 teacher assistants, school bus drivers, custodians, and secretaries. It was a county-wide school system. Montgomery County has over 1 million people. And it was a great union job. And the president was a man named Vincent Fu. And he was just a wonderful mentor. He was very patient. He invested his time. He really taught me how to represent workers being investigated and taught me how to put an effective grievance presentation together, kind of the core work we do. So I just want to thank him, even though none of you know the guy. We had a great relationship for my 5.5 years working with SEIU. Other than that glitch when me and my coworkers started a 2-person staff union, that made him a little sore, but other than that, it was terrific. Montgomery County, Maryland, in the DC suburbs was part of the DC Central Labor Council. And the Central Labor Council was run by a guy named Josh Williams, beautiful Jamaican lilt to his voice. So I was a 25-year-old staff guy, and he entrusted me with the entire AFL-CIO COPE operation in Montgomery County, Maryland. And it was just a wonderful opportunity for someone young just getting started in the labor movement to have this person, entrust me. Now, it wasn't just the grunt work of running phone banks out of the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers Union office, because that is grunt work. But he empowered me to get involved in endorsement process and lobbying a couple of county issues that had a labor relations bent. And I was a kid. I was 25 years old. And I just always appreciate when people give young people an opportunity to shine, because young people will shine if they're given real responsibility. So I just want to thank Josh for that start. I've worked for a bunch of different local elected officials, union leaders. Some of the teachers in the room know Loretta Johnson. She was my boss. She was a paraprofessional in Baltimore City who ended up running the Baltimore Teachers Union. Even though teachers were the majority of that union, Loretta was a force of nature, and I worked for her. She gave me an opportunity to be a lobbyist. That's what got me involved in government relations work. I remember my first bill. The governor's signature pen is on the wall in my office. It was giving school security officers in Baltimore City arrest powers. And I think about it today with some controversy over the SROs in Rhode Island. My first bill put on behalf of a bunch of black men who were security in Baltimore City who wanted schools to be safer. They wanted arrest powers. That was the first bill I lobbied for. It was a great opportunity to get discussion about real ideas. The other thing I did in Maryland was a lot of organizing, although some of the organizing was more about rating than organizing. And I looked to my friends at the NEA table. Look, I'm Roman Catholic, so a little bit of confession has to come out. Part of my job in AFT in Maryland was challenging NEA to represent teachers. This was before there was a no-rate agreement between the 2 organizations. I worked on, you'd be happy to know, 3 unsuccessful raids of NEA school districts. I love the relationship we have now, but that was a different time. Actually, the last campaign I worked on was 300 teachers in Western Maryland in Garrett County, and we filed a petition to challenge the NEA, and then the AFT and the NEA signed a no-rate agreement. So that AFT National Union said, sorry, can't help you, you're on your own. I lost that election too, but only by 6 votes. Marcia Reback was the one who hired me when I even though I ordered not one but 2 pints of Guinness when she interviewed me at the Dubliner, a bar halfway between Union Station and the AFT headquarters in D.C. The one thing I've always cherished about working for Marcia, I mean, she was smarter. Some people who are smarter, they think they're smarter than everyone else. Well, Marcia really was. But I'd sit in her office, we'd after the legislative day, the next day I'd go in to talk about stuff. She'd always ask me to argue with her. She knew she could win the argument, but she always asked me to argue with her, challenging me, let's talk things through. And I've always valued talking things through because of Marcia's leadership. I now work for Frank Flynn, who's not here today. He is a gentleman and a scholar, and though he's not here, please tell him I said that. And in my job, I've been very lucky. I've been able to work with organizations. In my professional job, I still have opportunities to work for the Labor History Society. I really value my time with other management neutral colleagues with the Labor and Employment Relations Association. I've been able to work on coalitions such as the Revenue for Rhode Islanders Coalition to raise income taxes on the wealthy. I've really loved the Citizens for Responsible Government group that opposed the Constitutional Convention. So it's just great to be able to engage with people outside of my, teacher world, if you will, in a real and meaningful way. Just a couple of quick comments, because I know there's no one out there who's going to give me the hook, because I'm the one who gives people the hook. When I think about what I'm, proudest of in my career as a teacher union rep primarily, for over 41 years, a couple of references have been made about Central Falls. So I was the union rep for the 88 fired Central Falls teachers. It was a real crucible at the time. People may forget, but that whole idea of improving schools by firing teachers and standing on their throat until they capitulated was actually an idea that was promoted by Democrats, starting from Barack Obama. I'll never forget that. While I tend to be fairly partisan, I'm union first, and partisan politics always comes second. We had a great stalwart union leader, Jane Sessoms, who I just loved working with. She was the toughest union leader I've ever met in my entire life. And it worked out, but damage was done. I've been most energized at the State House, lobbying for really tough causes, like opposing the initiations of charter schools and charter school expansion, and it's all about union avoidance. I think people have figured that out now, but I was back there in the late 90s and early aughts where lots of Democrats, in addition to Republicans, thought that this was the way to go. The pendulum's finally shifting, and I'm very grateful for that. And that includes the pension issue, which is another thing that I've dedicated a significant amount of my working career for. I've got to say, I moved here in '94. In 1995, they proposed a 1% contribution increase, same benefits, and we thought the world was about to end. Little did we know that was just the beginning of a 15-year series of pension fights, again, trying to diminish the work of people. Finally, in terms of accomplishments, 10 years ago, there was a question on the ballot, should we have a constitutional convention? 40% of the people, over 40% margin, supported the idea. The labor movement took a lead, joined with the ACLU and Planned Parenthood in forming a coalition to oppose it. We raised some money, and that 40% margin supporting it, couple of months later, turned out to a 10% margin opposing it. That's the power of community. That's the power of labor working with other community organizations to work for our collective best interest to get things done. Finally, when people ask, well, why do you get involved in the labor movement? Well, the answer to that, when I was 20 years old thinking about this, was that I wanted to work for social justice, and I was Catholic, but celibacy wasn't for me. So if I'm not going to be a missionary, well, maybe I'll try the labor movement. I really didn't know. I have been blessed to work for social justice every day of my life, get a salary that supports my family by working for the Rhode Island labor movement, particularly for the Rhode Island teacher labor movement, and I appreciate all the teachers in the room. It's been a real blessing to represent you and your interests. People take your work for granted. Politicians take you personally for granted. It shouldn't be. The pendulum is shifting only because the union has stood strong and been the voice of reason even when there's loud voices against reason going on in our state. We're going to win the day because we unite together. Thank you all very much. I'll present the plaque to myself. I'm going to wait for Scott.
Come on, Vicky, jump right up on that stage.
Yeah.
Come on, you old Bolshevik.
One more, though. All right. Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you, Scott, two very esteemed leaders of our organization and in the movement itself. Our next award, we switch gears a little bit from Lifetime Achievement to the Trailblazers Award. We're honoring those who are continuing to move the labor movement forward in new ways. Our next introduction is for the president of the AAUP, a union representing STAT faculty at the URI. Miriam is in the history department. Miriam Ruman, come on up.
Short person adjustment. So our final award of the evening, the Trailblazers Award, is something a group of us came up with, 3 years ago or so now, to honor people by saying, you're doing something really, really cool. We hope to see you back here in 30 years. No pressure, but we want to do this now. So tonight's award is going to go to GLOW, Graduate Labor Organization for Brown University. And to start with, I want to tell you, I did my PhD at Brown, let's say around the turn of the last century. That sounds big enough. And at the time, the idea that Brown grads would ever en masse think of ourselves as workers, let alone have an actual movement, seemed unimaginably remote. For a lot of us in this room, in the same age group, if you grew up during the Reagan years, you know what I'm talking about, right? We absorbed a model, and this was certainly very prevalent in academia, a model that stressed that our role was privileged apprentices. We were not workers. We were doing this so we wouldn't be workers, if you want to be really blunt about it. And the Supreme Court's Yeshiva decision in 1980, finding that faculty were not covered by most of the NLRB. If that was the case, then obviously graduate students, workers, could never, ever be labor, right? Things have changed a whole lot. So over the years, though, when conflicts over workload, conditions, a jerk advisor, etc., or pay, when these emerged, the assumption was keep your mouth shut. You are going to be privileged if you just go along with this, do all the work, don't talk about your pay, and be grateful for the opportunity to be part of the intellectual world. At the same time, the academic world was changing around us. Secure jobs were vanishing, contingency rates were skyrocketing, and the academic work became ever more precarious. So how did we get to where we are now? Obviously, increasing attention to these conditions of academic precarity saw rising interest in and over time success for grad workers. Unions during the 90s and the early aughts began to really rise up, especially in public institutions. And when the NLRB began to cautiously decide that private institutions as well were indeed employing the grad workers there, more followed suit. More recently, COVID, as so many of us know from our varied working lives, threw into relief the heavy workload of many previously invisible kinds of labor. And so this is briefly the context for a generation of grads at Brown and elsewhere mobilizing. At Brown, they went through a number of different acronyms I'm not going to lay out, became GLOW in 2018, right? I think after years of organizing drives. And the reason we're recognizing GLOW and Brown in particular is that members there have really worked hard to continually expand what counts as labor, even what counts as a student, beyond teaching assistants, beyond even graduate level. And now their group includes a number of different categories of workers. Under the leadership of the last couple leaders, including Grithika Ramamurthy and Sharina Razak, GLOW has demonstrated the true union of workplace bargaining with engaged social activism. In their own words, quote, "As researchers, teachers, and mentors, graduate workers are vital to everyday university functioning." So by insisting that the intellectual is the political, like an earlier generation argued the personal was, and also insisting that what happens in the classroom, the lab, the dorm, these are inextricable from how work is valued. GLOW has shaken up its own institution, which Brown really had coming, and we hope will continue to inspire many more to come. So the Rhode Island Labor History Society is delighted to present GLOW with our 2024, I'm lost in time, Trailblazers Award, President Michael Ziegler and Vice President Victoria Antonetti, if you'll come up.
Thank you. We're both going to speak. Victoria is far more brilliant and briefer than I am, so you're in for a real treat once I'm done with this. I want to begin by first acknowledging our fellow honorees, Bob, Karen, Jim. I just want to say, Isaac Newton famously said about the nature of knowledge that we stand on the shoulders of giants. The three of you are undoubtedly giants in labor in Rhode Island. We're receiving this award as the new kids on the block. We really couldn't have done it without the work that you've done before us. So thank you. Also, I wanted to say, Scott, I hope that when I grow up, I end up achieving your lung capacity. Time will tell.
I haven't grown up yet.
Touche. So first, I would just like to say to you, brothers, sisters, and siblings in labor, thank you for seeing fit to honor us tonight. I think there's an unfortunate and long history of Brown University seeking to set itself apart from working people in this city, in this state. I just want to be absolutely clear. We are workers, and we see ourselves as part of a proud history of working class organization in Rhode Island. I would go so far as to say that our ability to organize is founded upon generations of institution building by and for Rhode Island's workers. Here I would acknowledge very briefly our brothers and sisters from USAW who blazed a trail for us in being among the first to organize at Brown. Looking to the present and the future, we at Local 6516 are proud to stand together with you as members of the state's labor movement. If any of you find yourself negotiating with our employer, a $7 billion hedge fund and land holding company with a school attached, please reach out to us. Your struggle, whether at Brown or elsewhere, is our struggle. In that same spirit of solidarity, I want to acknowledge a few times we've collaborated with some of the people in this room tonight. A few years ago, Justin Kelly of Painters District Council 11 reached out to me to let me know that Brown was refusing to offer good paying union jobs for the upkeep of their dorms. DC 11 and GLOW collaborated on a letter addressed to President Paxson. I'm pleased to say that shortly after, the school backed down from trying to use scab labor. When members of Teamsters Local 251 struck RISD last year, we brought our members and our noisemakers to the picket line. You could actually hear that picket all the way up on the top of College Hill, believe it or not. Hell yeah. And the workers managed to win major concessions from RISD management, I'm pleased to recall. I would, of course, be remiss not to mention all the support we received from our friends, our union siblings at the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals. I want to acknowledge Frank Flynn, who again cannot be here tonight, Jim, the rest of the wonderful staff at RIFT, and all of our brothers and sisters in the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers. They have supported us from the time that we were just a group of graduate students with a dream to form the first recognized graduate labor union at a private university. Since then, we've won a recognition election, successfully negotiated 2 precedent-setting collective bargaining agreements, and grown from a few graduate workers with big dreams to a campus-wide local representing more than 2,000 workers spread across 5 units. All the while, RIFT has stood behind us, and we're sincerely grateful for their support. Victoria and I are here tonight as representatives of the local as a whole, and so I think it's important for me to paint a picture of who has been organizing at Brown. It's the PhD student here on a visa from abroad and terrified to speak up about the fact that their advisor is illegally making them work 60 hours a week because that same advisor has the power to revoke their visa and force them to leave the country. It's a 19-year-old hired as a TA for a computer science class, only to find that they are responsible for designing the course in its entirety, a course for which a tenured professor with a 6-figure salary will get full credit. It's a postdoctoral researcher who has started their first job after years of difficult, underpaid graduate work, only to discover that they can't afford childcare for their newborn on their salary. It's workers like these who have overcome their fears, spent hours talking to their colleagues, and won major improvements to their working conditions for one of the most powerful institutions in the state. What have these workers won? Well, in my own case, I can tell you that when I started at Brown, before we had a contract, I was offered a stipend of around $31,000 a year. Next year, which God willing will be my last year as a PhD student, I will be making over $52,000 a year. That's an increase of just around 65%. This, I should say, is the part in my prepared remarks where I got an email from management that made my blood boil. Luckily, they don't know what's coming after I get back from the energy I'm getting from this room tonight. So just to say that the rest of this may be a little bit shaggy, but I'm going to try and keep it brief. We also managed to win for the first time discrimination and harassment being grievable, with independent arbitration being the final result. This is crucial to eliminating a real culture of fear around really rampant, unfortunately, sexual harassment in academic workplaces. Too many survivors are currently very afraid to come forward. We're going to put an end to that, our union. We have won this. We're going to enforce our contract. We're not going to allow tenured academics to continue to harass their graduate workers. I want to end just by thanking a few people that I didn't thank before. For one, our lovely staff members. Obviously, being that many workers within our local end up graduating, there's a lot of turnover. Our staff is really the soil from which our leadership grows. We really could not do it without them. I also want to thank Mark Gursky, who I think is somewhere in the room tonight. Mark and the attorneys at Gursky, Weems, and Chanley have really been instrumental in helping us. We're kind of at the bleeding edge of labor law, and they've really held our hand all the way. And frankly, they've been undercharging us for a long time. We're working on rectifying that now, but we really can't thank them enough. Beyond that, I lastly want to end by acknowledging my two predecessors who Miriam recognized in her introduction. Rithika Ramamurthy and Sharina Razik are two tremendous women of color who led our union and really taught me so much about being an organizer, about being a labor leader. And they really taught me to really be fearless in standing up to bosses when it really meant ensuring that we as workers had our rights respected. And I guess just to tie things together, I think about Jim talking about this being the 200th anniversary of the strike in Pawtucket and how that was led by young women, right? And Sharina and Rithika really exemplify that legacy, right? Labor's past was women in leadership, and it's women in leadership now. And I have another leader here, a woman who is a proud leader of our union. I'll turn it over to her because I've talked too long. So, Victoria, please.
Finding what I've prepared. Michael's very kind to say I'm going to be more eloquent. I'm a mathematician and I have asthma, so I think I don't find myself as the most compelling orator, but I'm very happy to be here and speak with you all. First, I just want to say thank you to the Rhode Island Labor History Society for this honor. It's an honor to be recognized by labor because you all understand what it takes to organize and to remind our communities of their power. Thank you for the work that you do. Graduate labor at Brown and around the country lacked a voice, especially in private institutions, until that historic moment where at Brown in 2018, many years ago, our local was born. Graduate workers then and now told Brown administration and the country that we believe in the dignity of workers and the communities where we live and where our work is done. We said and we continue to say that workers know what our workplaces should look like. Meet us at the bargaining table in open bargaining and we'll show you with our proposals and with our numbers. As one of the bargaining co-chairs of our last contract, open bargaining was really important to us and it allowed us to add transparency in the process, but it also allowed us to show Brown that graduate workers and all the workers who are now in our local, they really care about the work that they do. They understand the power that they have. And they're, just as they're committed to education and to the work that they do, they're committed to showing up and standing up for safe and equitable workplaces for all workers on our campus. Brown did not like this. But again, grads showed up and they continue to show up and we continue to make our demands heard along with all labor in Rhode Island and around the world. We also, I think, as has been alluded to, began to understand the value of the work that we do and demystifying that part for ourselves because there's a lot of, and now I'm riffing off my speech, so I might diverge a little, but there's a lot that we're told, that this is a privileged position that you're in and you're in an elite institution with the greatest minds in the world. And you should be lucky to even be here. You maybe shouldn't even be paid is the kind of conversation, what's alluded to in conversations. And I'm really glad to see workers know the value of their work and to be even more passionate about their work, but to also understand that a safer workplace creates better work. We're being able to do our research even better now. Being able to work with labor organizers at Brown, dedicated workers at Brown, has been the honor of my time as a graduate worker. I'm a rising fourth year now. But while Brown grads labor, they also organize. Our local has expanded, and we hope and are working towards every worker at Brown knowing their power and reclaiming it alongside those who have already reclaimed it, their fellow workers in the unit. And our work continues, and we're very excited to do it. I just wanted to say solidarity with all the labor work being done here and around the world, and thank you again for this honor.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you, GLO, and thank you, Miriam Newman, as well. Thank you very much. And now, coming up on the end of our festivities, Alexis Santoro, it's time for our 50-50 drawing. Please come on up. Who's going to be drawing my winning ticket right now?
Okay, folks, for everybody who put in for the 50-50 tonight, we thank you. This person tonight's winner's going home with $655. All right, what do we got here?
Let me read it.
You read it. Yeah, no one wants to hear me talk.
130926.
1309 26. 1309 26.
No name on the back, right? All right, we're gonna call again.
Wow. Do another. Oh my, don't you?
131018.
131018. We thank you very much. He's giving it back to the organization. We appreciate this. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. What a grand gesture that was. And now, brothers and sisters, as all proper union events should end, I'm going to invite you all to join along with us in the singing of Solidarity Forever, accompanied on guitar by our friend Jonathan. I know for a fact that there are lyric sheets at all of your tables, so please, Jonathan, get us started off.
Inspiration to the once endless miles of railroad laid. Now we stand outcast and starving midst the wonders we have made. But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. And the union makes us strong. All the world that's owned by idle drones is ours and ours alone. We have laid the wide foundations, built the skyward stone by stone. It is ours not to slave in, but to master and to own, while the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn. But without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel can turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Everybody now. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies multiplied 1,000-fold. We can bring the birth a new world from the ashes of the old, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. One more time. Ready? Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming down, and good night. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments.